Hi, everybody. My name is Yanely Espinal. I'm super excited to be hosting this free webinar today with College Now program. I think that the more information you can get about money and banking and budgeting and personal finance and financial literacy, the earlier in your life you get it, the better it's going to be for you. So I'm really happy to partner together with CUNY to offer this workshop. I work at a nonprofit organization called Next Gen Personal Finance, NGPF for short. And what we do is we basically teach teachers and students in high school and middle school all about money, how money works, checking, saving, banking, credit, investing, insurance, taxes, everything, all the things that you need to know so that you can be prepared to make good choices with your money when you make your money. So yesterday we did a session about paying for college. If you missed that session, it's totally okay. It was recorded, and there was also the presentation slides to follow along. So you can just reach out to Clemente, and I'm sure, or check the email that I'm sure that was sent out, so you can refer to that presentation. Today we're going to be talking about budgeting and banking, and then tomorrow we're going to talk about understanding credit. So if you have questions about, as we're going through today, if you have questions about credit cards or borrowing money from the bank or things like that, save those questions for tomorrow and come back and join us for understanding credit. Today, we're just going to be talking about dealing with your own money. So not borrowing money using credit card loans or personal loans or car loans or anything like that. All the stuff we're talking about today is money that you have earned or that somebody gave to you, and it's yours to keep. Okay, so we're going to jump in here with a quick introduction. I told you already, my name is Yanely. I work as the Director of Educational Outreach at a not-for-profit. So again, everything that we do is free. Webinars like this, offering curriculum materials. I'm going to put some links later in the presentation. So if you guys want to check out some of the activities and some of the worksheets to help you continue to study more about money, you can do all of that on our website for free. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story, because I think sometimes it's weird when you go to events and there's a host talking and you don't really know much about them. So I'm going to start with a little bit of background. Just like all of you, I am from New York City. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, in Bushwick, and my parents are Dominican immigrants. So they moved to New York City from Dominican Republic before I was even born. And they didn't have really any money. They didn't really know anybody. They don't even speak English. And so they really had to figure out a whole new country, a whole new culture, and a whole new financial system. And I think they obviously, like a lot of immigrants, they face a lot of challenges. But in New York City, there's a vibrant community of other Latin American immigrants. So they were able to really, tap into a community of Spanish-speaking immigrants and just really feel a lot of happiness and joy in that community. But at the end of the day, there was not a lot of money. There was a lot of joy, happiness, right? Culture, excitement with the community, but not a lot of financial literacy, not a lot of education about money, how to make more money, how to invest money, how to make money grow, and just basic stuff like what we're going to talk about today. When you do get money, how do you budget that money, and how do you make decisions about banking, where to save it, where to grow it? So for me, I was very, very lucky because in school, I was always that type of kid that was like trying to get 90s all the time. And I always wanted to do really good in school, get good grades so I can impress my parents. So I ended up getting a full scholarship to Brown University. So I left New York City when I was 18 to go to Providence, Rhode Island. And I spent 4 years in Rhode Island. It was a very transformational experience to go to school with people that were from all over the world, extremely intelligent, very, very wealthy. And it really opened my eyes to, the world of money. But I did make a lot of mistakes while I was there because I felt a lot of pressure to keep up with the kids around me. But a lot of them were from wealthy families. So it's kind of hard to keep up with people that are not in the same lane as you. And so for me, that meant that I went to the bank and I got a credit card. And I started spending money that I didn't have. I was using it at first to buy things that I needed, like textbooks and school supplies and, paying stuff for my science class, buying art supplies. But after a few weeks of realizing like how easy it is to keep on using that credit card for other things, I started to buy things that I didn't need unnecessarily, frivolous spending, things that like, clothes, shoes, food, movie tickets, going out. And so I ended up graduating college with just one small student loan. It was about $5,000 because I wanted to study abroad, but the rest of my tuition was covered by my scholarship. And then the rest of my debt was $20,000, $20,000 of credit card debt, because I didn't have these types of events, this type of webinar for somebody to talk to me, guide me, mentor me, a teacher, a parent. Nobody ever talked to me about money, credit cards, interest rate, understanding the difference between different banks and credit unions. I never had this type of conversations. So, that's why I wanted to offer these workshops and make sure that that you guys, the next generation that is coming up, making these decisions in your teens, and also when you go off to college, that you do have some information about how to think through things better than I did, and hopefully not make as many mistakes as I made with my money. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with this quick quote, which is, what doesn't get measured doesn't get managed. This is one of my favorite quotes because it applies to so many different things. And money is one of the things that this quote applies to. So for some examples, people track and measure things all the time for different goals that they have. You guys probably know this because maybe you have a bunch of things that you need to do for school right now, and you have a to-do list with all the things that you need to get done. Maybe you have a bunch of meetings coming up. You have different classes at different times. So you have a calendar where you keep track of all the different things, the days and the times for your classes and the meetings that you have. If you like to write goals down and try to accomplish goals that you have, maybe you have a journal where you keep on writing those goals down, and making sure that when you achieve one goal, you write down the next goal that you have. If you're an active, like an athlete, athletic, maybe you have a Fitbit or like an Apple Watch, and you track your steps and track your calories and things like that. With food intake, that's a big deal. Like for a lot of people that want to lose weight, they have to track the calories. They have to keep track of those numbers. And, of course, with celebrity athletes, they track their performance for, how many basketball shots can you do in 20 minutes? How many free throws can you do? How many, dribbles can you go back and forth and dribble for how long, right? And all that kind of stuff. These are tests to make sure that you're measuring your skill and measuring where you are. And the whole point of that is so that you can get better. So if you're trying to get better with money, first, you need to measure the money that you have, even if it's a little bit, and then set a goal about getting better. I want more money, or I want to grow this money, or I want to use this money for something specific. I want to save more, make more, whatever, right? But in order to track the money that you have, in order to make any kind of goal and change what you're doing with your money, save more, do anything, you have to track it. And the way you track your money is with a budget. That's really the only way that you can know how much money is coming in, where is it going when you spend it, and that kind of thing. I'll tell you right now, I'll make a bet with you guys that if you step outside, obviously wearing your mask, please, but if you step outside with your mask on and you stop random people and ask them, do you have a budget that you like, a real budget that you use every month to track how much money you're spending and making? I promise you, 8 or 9 times out of 10, they're gonna say, no, I just kind of know. Like, I just look at my checking account and I just kind of know how much I'm spending. I know. But how do you know if you're not writing it down? How do you know if you're not tracking it? So the biggest mistake people make is they think that in their brain, by mental accounting, it's called mental accounting, they think they can keep track in their brain of all the money things. But you can't. Like, you just can't. There's no way. Scientifically, it's proven that when you think you can keep everything in your mind, you're going to end up forgetting and losing track of the things that you need to do and how much money you had coming in or how much was going out. So it's really important to actually track it. Now, the basics of budgeting, this is the super basic idea, is literally taking your income and breaking it into a bunch of little pieces, just like a pie, just like a pizza. You break it into little pieces and say, this big chunk of my money is going to go to one specific thing. This other chunk is going to this other thing. This other chunk is going to that thing. But the problem is that a lot of people do not know how much of their money is going to what items in their budget. So it's so important to just, first of all, just have this information. It's like data. Like when you think about, Facebook and Google and Apple, they want so much data. They're always taking our data from us. They want to know how old we are, where we live, what we spend our money on, what our names, what our email. They want all that data, right? When we're using their websites and their apps. Why are they so obsessed with data? Because they can make decisions about how to make more money off of us if they know about what we like and what we spend money on and what our values are and where we live and where we shop. So you have to know those things about yourself. And the only way to know is to look at where is your money going? Where's the most of your money going every week, every month? And if you don't really know, you think you know, you need to have a budget so you can know for sure. So this is just one example of a budget. And the reason I picked this example instead of a different one is because it does not have dollar signs. A lot of people think that when you make a budget, you need to put, okay, $50 is going to food, $100 is going to my cell phone, $60 is going to MetroCard. No, that's not. You have to try to shoot for goals that are percentages. And that is the hardest part of budgeting. Because if you have a paycheck and you tell yourself, all right, I made some money, I want to save 50% of that money, that's really hard because now you're cutting that check in half, putting half of it in savings, and now you only have as if you made half of that money that you earned. But this is the type of thinking that really helps people succeed, because when you look at it in a percentage form, you're increasing the savings rate. Savings rate is the percentage of the money that you make that you actually save instead of spending it. So the only way that you can increase that savings rate is by, first of all, tracking your spending so you know what is your savings rate. And then two is putting little by little over time, taking little bits of money from other categories and reallocating it, moving it to that savings rate category so that you can save more and more over time. And then, of course, the other way to save more is to earn more money. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Okay, so this is one of the things that I wanted to talk about. Yesterday, we played a game that was called Time for Payback. And in that game, you kind of had a little bit of a sense of the money choices that you have to make as the day-to-day goes by. You know, first you have to buy things for your dorm room. Then you have to buy textbooks. If you don't have a computer already, you might need to buy a laptop for college. You know, there's all these little things. If you need to get to class and it's 20 minutes away, oh, you have to pay for transportation to get there, or if you don't have it. So there's all these little things that add up. And so for me, when I first started budgeting, it was just after college. And I remember I first got my first job and I was a teacher and I got my first paycheck. It was over $1,000. And I thought I was rich. I was like, oh, I got $1,000. Having $1,000 when you grew up with like almost no money, you feel like you're rich and it's a lot of money. But $1,000 can go so quickly when you have all of these responsibilities that you need to be paying for. So just some examples here, right? Food, your electric bills, your gas bill, your cable bill, your cell phone bill, rent, if you're paying rent, insurance, like if you have renter's insurance for your apartment, or if you have insurance on your phone to protect in case it breaks, or if you have like a life insurance or health insurance plan, that costs money every month. Transportation, either paying for a car and gas and your car insurance and your monthly car payment, or you just pay $121 and get your monthly unlimited Metro card, right? But either way, you need to put money aside for that. Then, of course, there's other categories. In this case, this is a 50-30-20 budget, which says that as soon as you get money, you want to try to split it in half. Like I said earlier, 50% goes to things that you absolutely need. Like you cannot continue to be successful living your life if you don't do these things, like feed yourself and house yourself and be able to get to your job and back home. And then on the other side, the other half gets split into 30 and 20%. 30% goes to things that you want to do, you know, entertainment stuff, subscriptions. Maybe you pay for Netflix, maybe you got Spotify, maybe you have some apps on your phone that you buy, shopping, hobbies, going to the movies, taking trips with your friends. Obviously, in COVID times, a lot of this stuff we had to cut back because we couldn't go out and be, you know, normally having fun like we're used to. But that's usually where that money does go towards, those categories. And then you have 20%, which is really the emergency savings, the debt payoff. So if you do have credit card debt or any student loan debt that you have, like making sure that you take one of break your paycheck into one of 5 pieces and take one of those pieces and put it towards debt. Because a lot of people, what they'll do is when they have debt that they need to pay back, they just send the minimum payment that's required for them to send. But what you should do is actually try and send a little bit more if you can. And we're going to talk about that tomorrow with the credit session, that the more you send, the faster you can get out of debt, whether that's student loan debt, credit card debt, whatever type of debt it is. So instead of looking at the minimum that they are charging you, try to divide your income by 5 and see if you can put as much of that 20% towards debt as possible. And of course, this is a little bit more applicable to you once you do graduate college, and if you have a car, credit cards, or if you have student loans, but it's still helpful across the board for anybody, really. So this is just one of the types of strategies that you could use, and it's called the 50-30-20 budgeting method. And again, half of it, things that you need, the other half is split 30% and 20% going to things that you want, and then things in the future, like trying to get out of debt so you can, you know, make your money grow more in the future, save an emergency savings fund so that if something bad happens, you have the money there. You don't have to stress out about where you're going to get money to handle that emergency. So it's always nice to have a cushion, and we'll kind of talk a little bit more about where to put that and what that should be like. All right, so number one thing that helps with budgeting is reading about budgeting. For me, when I was in college, I remember I had to read all these textbooks, all these articles. We had assigned reading. It was hundreds of pages every week that we had to read. but I never got a chance to read things that I wanted to read, like that I actually, what I think will help me. And it's not just for class or for me to like be able to participate and show my professor that I read. I wanted to read things that I actually think will help me and be valuable to me. So once I graduated college, that's when I first got frustrated with my money, because I felt like I didn't have enough money to budget everything. And that's when I started to pick up books about money. And in every single one of these books, every single one of these books has something different, unique, interesting, important, and helpful to teach me about money. The 4 Hour Work Week talks about like how to use your time wisely, because time is money, and maximizing your time so you can make, as much money in as little bit of time as you can. Your Money or Your Life was really about the value of money and how much we don't really realize that, if you're making $8 an hour, $10 an hour working at a job, and then you buy a $20 shirt, that $20 shirt costs you 2 hours of work. Because if you're making $10 an hour, so you really have to think about, when you buy stuff, really think about how much is it going to take for me to work to buy these things. And that, to me, like, I never thought about it like that. And so that helped me with that new idea to pay attention to how much I'm working to buy things. The Millionaire Next Door, the book in the middle, ooh, that was probably the first book that helped me change my mindset. Because growing up, I always thought that when you have like, when you have a Gucci belt, when you have Prada sneakers, when you have Chanel bag, when you have Louis Vuitton on your belt, when you have like a fancy diamond watch, like, to me, that means that you have a lot of money. But in this book, it actually teaches you that you shouldn't assume that people have a lot of money just because they have status symbols. Status symbols could be brand name clothes, fancy cars, jewelry, whatever things people like to show off, right? But that doesn't mean that they have money. That could mean that they borrowed money to pay for that stuff, and that they're in a lot of debt because they just want to show off. You don't know if it's, do they have the money and they can afford that, or did they go into a lot of debt to just be able to show off? You'll never know unless that person shows you their bank statements and you can see if the money's actually there or not. So for me, that was like, to me, again, growing up in a community where people don't really talk about money, that was a big game changer for me in my mind, to shift my mindset and stop thinking about money as physical things that show off your wealth. Instead, think about it as how little debt do you have. If you can have no debt, that's awesome. And how much wealth are you actually building in your lifetime? So for me, that was huge. What else? So then Get a Financial Life. That was a great book for just understanding your holistic approach to your money, making sure you understand budgeting, taxes, insurance, banking, all the different moving pieces, and investing too. But the very first book that I ever read, I saved it for last, is Women and Money. That was a book by Susie Orman that I read when I was like maybe 22, 23 years old. And that book changed my life. It taught me how to budget. That's when I first created a spreadsheet that I'm going to show you guys in a little bit, about how to actually budget my money and think about creating a savings plan. So these are all the types of things that, the earlier you can get on it, the better off you're going to be. Because the later you wait, like for me, I didn't start until my mid 20s, but if I had started in my teens or early 20s, I would have like tens of thousands more dollars now compared to where I'm actually at, because I started later in the game. So the earlier you start, the more you can actually start, accumulating money, building wealth, and doing things the right way strategically when it comes to your financial choices. So these are books I definitely recommend. And then all of the slide presentation that we're looking at today is going to get emailed after the event. So if you're like, oh, I wanted to write down the names of the books, don't worry. You're going to be able to look through the slides after today, just in case. All right, let's see. So budgeting spreadsheets. We're going to talk about budgeting first. These are some examples of budgeting tactics or strategies that people like to use. And I would definitely recommend trying a few out until you find one that you know is going to work for you, because everybody's different. And I always hate when I like read or watch something and the person who's giving advice says like, this is the right way to do it, this is the only way to do it, because that's not true. When it comes to money, there's a lot of different ways that you can approach it, and something different might work for you versus it might work differently for me. So I think it's very important to show people all their options and let them pick the thing that they know is going to be best for them based on their personality, based on how they spend their time, their money, what they value, what their goals are, etc. So in this case, we have a few different budgeting spreadsheets. The first one is for cash envelopes. This is actually not a spreadsheet, it's just a video. But I'm going to show this YouTuber. Her name is Natalie, and she posts videos every single month about her budgeting process. This is an amazing resource for people who, like, maybe they don't make a lot of money, but you get to see somebody else who doesn't make a lot of money, how she manages her money. And she literally does it every single dollar, one at a time, using only cash. Now, the reason she prefers to do cash is because she works at a restaurant and she gets cash every week at the restaurant, and she also gets cash tips. So if you're working in a job where the way that you get your money is mostly cash, then you might actually prefer to do cash budgeting systems. So this is just one example of a cash budgeting system. Oops, I didn't mean to click that. I want to show you guys just how she does it. So she creates a piece of paper where she actually doesn't even have anything fancy. She just gets a pen and paper and she writes down the month and her budget. At the top, she puts how much money each paycheck was for each of the 4 weeks in the month. Then she writes down, the first 2 weeks is the first paycheck, the next 2 weeks is the next paycheck. She puts cash underneath that and any tips that she got on top of her pay. After adding all of the money up, you can see the total amount of money she made that week. And each month there's 4 weeks. So she does week 1, week 2, week 3, and week 4. Now, this is her general plan. What she tried to do is make sure that she's doing similar things every single week, but sometimes it's a little bit different. And that's okay. If you make more money one week than another week, so you can see she puts certain money towards things that she has to do. Like she has a Southwest credit card. She's trying to pay that off. She has to pay rent. She has daycare that she has to pay for, her cell phone. What else is on here? Car insurance, her electric bill. So everything that she has to pay for, she writes it out one by one. And then each check, she literally divides it up. This is how much money I'm going to put for that. This is how much money I'm going to put to that. So I just love the fact that she's so organized. She takes the time every single week to sit down and go through her money. This probably takes her like 15, 20 minutes. Here you can see this video took 33 minutes for her to record it. So just making it a habit that you, once a week, you sit down and you go through your money. How many people out there don't do this? They make it a habit to exercise so they can look good. They make it a habit to go online and shop so they can buy new things. They make it a habit to listen to new music so they can know what's popping on the radio and what new artists come out. They make it a habit to do all kinds of things: brush your teeth, shower, do your hair, do your makeup. Why don't we make it a habit to go through the money that you have in your checking account and see what plan you can make for that money, or what cash you have and how you want to use it? So this is really, like, I really was impressed when I saw her video, just how well she actually organizes everything. And then after she builds it out, she makes the plan for the money. Then the next thing she does is she actually just puts every category in a separate envelope. So it's kind of like old school. Like, she does, every single envelope has the category, the name on it. And then she counts out the money, how much is going to go inside of that envelope, and she puts it inside the envelope. So when she's walking around with her wallet, she's like, all right, I need money for, for whatever thing, she's groceries, for food. She's going to go to the envelope that says groceries and food, and she can only use dollars from that envelope to pay for the groceries and the food. If she runs out of money for groceries and food that month, guess what? She has to wait till the next paycheck before she can buy more food or groceries. Or she's going to have to take money out of a different category, and then she's going to owe it back to herself. She's going to have to put it back there the next time she gets a paycheck. So this is just one. I think this is a very popular way to budget, but it's very, very basic. And one of the reasons that I'll say, the pros of it, it's very easy to do. It's tactile. So you're literally sitting there touching your money, having a good, experience with a relationship with planning every single dollar for your budget. But at the same time, cash can be a little dangerous for a few reasons. Obviously, if you lose the wallet or if your money gets stolen, that all that money's gone. So having money in cash is not always a good idea. And then the second reason why cash is not always the best option for budgeting is because you're trying to save your money, you're trying to build it up, and you don't get any interest. You don't earn any interest on your money when it's in cash form. You have to put it inside the bank in order to get interest on it. And you have to be specifically putting it in a savings account, which we're going to talk about in a second. All right, so a couple of other options. I'm going to show you the one that I like, which is, I created it. It's a spreadsheet that I was using for many, many years. And it's a really great, because similar to how she sets up her envelopes with her cash, what you do is you'll put every paycheck for the month. In this spreadsheet, you only are going to touch the yellow cells. Green cells, white cells, and orange cells automatically populate, so you do not need to touch them. So in this case, paycheck number one for week one, let's say it was $250. Paycheck number two, let's say it was $425. Maybe my mom gave me some money for my birthday. I'm going to put $45 for other. And maybe I babysat my nieces this weekend, and my sister gave me like, $50 for babysitting. So that's all the money I made this month. Now over here, it's going to automatically add it up for your total income, $865 in 1 month. So now when you go down here, remember how we talked about percentages being when you're budgeting, you want to try to have percentage goals like, all right, I'm going to save this percentage. I'm going to use this percentage for these different goals. In this case, it automatically does the math for you. It says, first thing you got to do when you make money, save money in a savings account. Emergency funds should be in a high yield savings account, which we're going to talk about in a second, but 10% of your money should go there. So it takes 10%, multiplies it by the amount of money you earned, which is $865, and it tells you, it recommends that you save $86.50. So that every month you're saving 10% of what you make and putting it aside and forgetting about it. Just pretend that that money just disappeared. But it's because you want to build up a lot of money in a savings account so that you have a cushion. So if an emergency happens and you need money, boom, you know you can go to that savings account. So in this case, let's say I didn't end up saving $86. My actual saving that month was only $75 because I needed the money for something else. But at least I saved something. So you want to put your actual in category in the column C. So then for rent, in a lot of cases, when you're a student in college, you're not actually paying rent. So this will probably be zero for a lot of people. But just so you can see that if you're making $865, it's recommended that you don't spend more than $260 on rent. A lot of people, they would spend like way more on renting a room or, you know, having roommates or whatever. And it's so important to pay attention to what percentage of the money you make are you willing to spend on rent. It should not be more than 30%. And in New York City, that's very hard because rent is high. But if you're a student, you should take advantage and live as long as you can with your family, as long as it's safe and somewhat comfortable. Sacrificing your earlier years and living at home longer, even after college, can save you so much money. Instead of giving $1,000 away every month to a landlord in rent, you can save that money in your savings account or pay off debt faster so that when you're in your 20s, you don't owe that much money to people and you actually have a lot better of a financial situation. So in this case, you would just go through here, say like, let's say gas, electric bills, whatever, it's $40. Cell phone bill, you know, say it's $60. You would just go through here and put each one. At the bottom, it's going to let you know if you're in the green, it will be green, which means that you're okay, you're still under budget. But if you spend too much, like let's say I put $500 here, or let's say 900, it's immediately going to turn red. It knows automatically that you are spending money that you don't have because you only made $865. So where did this 900 come from? So it's going to show you that you're not in your budget. That might be using credit cards or borrowing money. That time starts to get you into dangerous territory, right? So then you end up going into debt. So it's really important to just do this exercise every week, every month, so that you know exactly where your money is more or less. And if you do have debt, that's okay. But as long as every single month the debt is getting smaller, a little smaller, a little smaller, instead of getting a little bigger, a little bigger, a little bigger. So just trying to manage the situation. Your debt is not going to be, you know, it's not going to disappear one day to the next. But at least by using a spreadsheet like this, you can have a plan to manage it and you know where your money's going. So this was one of the first spreadsheets that I ever used, and I still use it today. And I recommend it to everybody that I meet that's new to budgeting. And then at the bottom, you can just make a new tab for any months that you're doing in the year. So like this is May, at the bottom you have June. You can just right click on that and say duplicate. And then instead of copy of June, you can change it to July. So now you have a tab for every single month and you can go through and do your budget all year long. Now, one of the important things to know too is that you can refer back. Like if you need to go back and be like, wait, how much money did I spend on food in May? Most people would not know. Most people, if I ask my friends, like, hey, how much money did you spend on rent or on food in May? Usually people know rent because rent is the same every month. But food, usually they'll be like, I don't know, I have to go check. But in this case, you could go to your data and look at the actual spending that you had. So this really helps you to be able to refer back, know your spending, know where your money's going. And that's the big difference between people that are really strong financially and people that are struggling financially. They just don't know where the money's going. All right, so here are a few budgeting apps. I just showed you a manual way using cash and also using a spreadsheet. But I know a lot of people, they don't want to do as much work. They try to find an easier way to do it. And budgeting apps are a great way to do things a little bit easier. So in this case, there's a few that are very popular here. Some questions in the chat box I'm gonna get to in a second, but just for the one from Eric that says, where do we get this template? The slides are gonna be emailed to you. And when you get the slides, just go to this slide. This is slide 9 and click on Miss Be Helpful. That's my my spreadsheet. My social media name is Miss Be Helpful, but the spreadsheet will open up. And if you want to check out the video of the girl doing the cash envelopes, click on that. If you want a different budget, like one pager budget instead of a multiple side, you can click on that. These are all free, and you could just make a copy of the spreadsheet. So for example, if you wanted to use this yourself, you would go to File over here in the top left corner and go to Make a Copy. Then save it in your own Google. I think you have to have a Gmail email account. Otherwise, you can't use Google Drive. So just make sure you have a Gmail email, save it to your Google Drive, and then it becomes yours and you can edit it and use it for the rest of your college years. And I wish I had this spreadsheet when I was in college. I really do. Okay, so that's everything here is clickable. So that's the information about accessing the resources. So for budgeting apps, I think it's nice to try some, especially if they're free, just to play around with them, especially if you like doing things digitally instead of manually. But I gotta say, when I started budgeting, I did everything manually. And I think that was the best way to go, because from going manual, once you start using an app, it's so much easier. But if you use an app always, you're never really going to be able to go back to doing things manually, and you won't build those skills of actually being able to do it yourself by hand with your own money. So I don't mind apps, and I think there's so many good ones, but I would recommend starting off with a manual approach, either the cash only budget or the spreadsheet, where you're in control. And then later on you can upgrade and get an app. And especially because a lot of these apps are usually they're not free. Absolutely. You know what? Let me put the link to these slides in the chat right now in case anybody wants to follow along with them. That's the link to the slide presentation. And also Clemente is going to email them as well. But I know some people might be eager to jump in. So you could look at the slides right now if you want. Okay, so these are just some recommendations. I'm not going to open them up, but if you are curious to read about these apps, you can click on it. So for example, if I wanted to read about YNAB, you could click on YNAB and it's going to take you to their website so you can learn about their app. Some of these are free. A lot of them are not. Mint is free. I remember I used to use Mint when I was out of college, but you do have to link it up to your bank account. And a lot of people don't like that because it creates security issues. Well, what if they hack my bank account because it's connected to the app, But it's the same thing as linking up your checking account with Venmo or Cash App or any of these other apps. They have to have access to your bank account in some way. So if you are afraid of giving too many apps information about your bank account, then maybe you just go the manual way, right? But just do what's right for you based on what you want to do with your money. Okay, so now let's get into banking. We talked about budgeting a little bit. I shared some budgeting resources. Here's some basics for banking. And then of course, all the questions in the chat, I'll make sure to come through and answer them if I haven't covered them yet. So for banking, basics, checking account, savings account. For the checking account, you want to make sure that this is stuff that money that you're going to be using every day. Money for laundry, money for buying toothpaste, detergent, money for paying for a Metro card, when all those kinds of things, you can use a debit card and the money comes directly out of your checking account. The debit card is linked up to your checking account. If you don't have enough money in your checking account, you're going to have a problem with your debit card because the money isn't there to back up that purchase. So you got to make sure when you think of debit cards, make sure you have the money in your checking account. For savings account, you do not get a debit card because the whole point is for you to save that money. And if you get a debit card, you're going to be swiping, buying stuff, and you're not going to be able to save up that money. So they don't give you a debit card, and it's a little bit harder for you to access that money and get it out. The point is for you to not take it out, to let it grow. So, I think if you can't access it, just hit request access, and by the end of the event, you should be able to access the document. Okay, so basically you want to make sure that the money you're putting in your savings account is money that you're growing over time. So it should be longer term things. And the good thing about a savings account is that you earn interest on your money. So they literally pay you to put your money in a savings account. That's free money. Just because I put my money in a savings account, I get paid some money. It's not a lot of money though. And that's the important thing to know, that every savings account is different. But the important reason why it's better to put money in the bank rather than have it in cash, like we saw with Natalie with her cash budget, is because when you have money in the bank, there is a government entity, which is called the FDIC. It's the Federal Deposit Insurance Corp. What they essentially do is they provide insurance on your money just in case anything goes wrong with the bank. The money's not there. The bank shuts down. They go out of business. You go try to get your money out. The bank is not there anymore. Those types of issues, the government will make sure that you will get any money back that was in that bank, up to $250,000 per account, per individual person. So you have to make sure, if you're looking at a checking account or a savings account and you're trying to think should I open this account? Should I go open that account? First things first, make sure that they are FDIC insured. Because if they're not FDIC insured, you need to run away and not look back. Nobody in this day and age in 2021 should be investing, putting money into a bank that's not FDIC insured. That's just not, it's not acceptable. At this point, every single bank should be insured. So you got to check for that, especially with banks that are new. You know, you want to look and see, are they FDIC insured? If they don't say FDIC insured on their website, move on to a different bank. There's plenty of options for banking, and most of them are FDIC insured. So if you're not sure or you don't find the information, just go somewhere else. There's plenty of really good quality banks for you to give your money to a bank that's not going to be protecting your money. All right, so when we talked about the debit card just a few slides ago, I said the debit card is linked directly to your checking account. Now, if you don't have enough money in your checking account, when you swipe your debit card, you're not going to be able to buy stuff. But there is this new program that, or not new, it's been around for years and years and years, but a lot of people aren't aware that it exists. It's called overdraft protection or overdraft coverage. Now, if anybody here already has a debit card, if you have ever seen a charge on your debit card and your checking account that says overdraft, let me know in the chat box, because I know when I was in high school and college, my debit card, I was always getting overdraft fees. And I really didn't know what it was and why they were charging me those fees. And now as an adult, I realized, like, okay, first of all, you only get charged an overdraft fee if you tried to make a purchase and you didn't have enough money to make that purchase in that checking account. So for example, I have $25 in my checking account and I go to buy something that costs $30. I only have 25 in my checking account. If I'm trying to buy something that costs $30, it don't add up. The math isn't right. But the bank will lend you $5 so that you have $30 to make the purchase. And then because they lent you $5, they charge you $30, $35, $32. Every bank has a different fee, but most of them are like in the 30s, $32, $33, $35. That is overdraft coverage, right? Or overdraft protection. It's making sure that if you can't make a purchase because you don't have the money, the bank steps in and makes sure you can still make the purchase with your debit card. I always tell people, say no to overdraft, because one reason is if you try to swipe your debit card and buy something and you don't have enough money, you should just not buy that thing. You don't have enough money to buy it. Go get some cash, put it into your checking account with your debit card, and then you can go make a purchase. But the bank you have to opt out of overdraft protection, basically. So when you have a checking account, you need to call up your bank or look at the number on the back of your debit card and make sure that you tell them, I do not want overdraft on my checking account. You have to do this, you guys, because they will put overdraft on your account if you don't know it, you don't pay attention, you don't realize you have it. And next thing you know, you get hit with a $35 fee and you're like, wait, what? So you have to take action. Today, go make sure you check your account. If you have overdraft on it, tell them to cut it out. I do not want overdraft. I don't want those fees. If I don't have enough money to buy something, the transaction should get declined. And the merchant is going to tell me, sorry, your debit card is not working. Okay, I'll be a grown-up, put the stuff back and come back when I have the money. And that's it. So, but you have to tell them to cut overdraft. There's another type of overdraft, actually, which is a little cheaper. I see Leo said with Chase, it's only $8 or $10. That is overdraft coverage. The difference between overdraft protection, the bank protects you by giving you their money. Overdraft coverage means that you have a checking account and you link it to a savings account with that same bank. Now, if your checking account doesn't have enough money, before the bank gives you their money, they'll look inside your savings account. If there's money in your savings account, they'll move enough money out of your savings into your checking account to make sure the debit card transaction does go through. But because they do you the favor of moving your money from your savings account to your checking account, they cover you, they got your back, they charge you a smaller fee, but they still charge you a fee. So it's really, really important to pay attention to these fees and to know that, listen, if you do not want to be paying them, you have to tell the bank to take that program off of your account. You do not want overdraft coverage. Most banks have it. Bank of America, Citibank, Chase Bank, Wells Fargo, they all charge overdraft fees. Some new banks that are coming out, like fintech companies, are creating a bank accounts like Chime Bank, Simple. There's a bunch of new banks that are coming out that are apps that do not have any overdraft fees. And the whole reason why they're doing that is because they think it's wrong. Like, it's messed up. Why would you make people pay these fees because they don't have enough money? Just make sure the transaction doesn't go through. So if you're looking for a newer bank that like already does not have overdraft and it's like trying to improve the way banking works, you might be interested in checking out some of the fintech companies instead of the more traditional banks that you see when you walk up and down the street. All right. So now let's talk about savings accounts, the different types of savings accounts. There was a question earlier that said, let's see, do you separate your regular savings from your emergency savings? That was a great question from Betty. At first, I did not do that because I just didn't have enough money. Like, I'm gonna be real. I didn't have a lot of money. I think I had like $120 in my savings account and maybe 50 or 60 bucks in my checking account when I was in college. And then I would get a new check, spend all my money, and then it will go down to the same amount again. But now as an adult, I do. I have 3 different savings accounts. One is for immediate emergencies that happen like right now. The other one is for my short-term savings goals. Like in 6 months, I want to go to Florida and visit my aunt and my cousin. So that's my short-term savings goal. I need to save up for that plane ticket. Then my last savings account is my long-term savings account. So that's like, all right, in 5 years, I want to get an apartment with my boyfriend, or I want to move into a house. I want to put a down payment on a house and start thinking about real estate in 5 years. Then I need to start putting money a little bit away for those longer term goals. So to me, I think it's important to try to have multiple savings accounts with different goals, because if you put all the money in one account, you just kind of lose track of like what's going where. Just like your budget, you need to have it like, with very clear buckets or categories. So it's helpful for me. I do 3 different savings accounts, and then I have my checking account, which is where my direct deposit comes every single month. So that was a great question. Juan said, can we find some of these books in other languages? I imagine some of them are available in Spanish, but probably not all of them. Audio, I know that there are Spanish translations for the audiobooks, but I would just Google the name of the book and then put in Spanish and see, or in other languages. I know that some of them are available in other languages, but I would just check online, just do a web search and you'll know right away. Other questions? Can we change the percentages? Yes, Betty, great question. If you want to change the percentages, you just have to make sure they add up to 100% in that spreadsheet. So if you change 10% to 15%, you added 5%. So now it adds up to 105, and that doesn't make sense. It has to make sure everything always adds up to 100%. So that means you would have to take away 5% from a different category. So just make sure that all the percentages, they add up to 100. And they're in decimal form. So just do that little like percentage to decimal conversion from like 8th grade when you had to learn how to convert percentages to decimals. So just make sure that you do that in the spreadsheet correctly. And if you all are working with the templates and the spreadsheets and you have questions, do not hesitate to reach out to me. Find me on social media, email me, whatever, and just ask me questions. I'm always happy to try to help out, because I remember when I was starting out and it was not always easy. Okay, so let's go ahead and go through the savings accounts. The easiest one to open is a traditional savings account, but that's also the most boring and like kind of like the wackest type of savings account, because they don't give you a lot of interest. For example, the Bank of America and the Chase and Wells Fargo traditional savings accounts, they give you 0.01% interest. So that means that if you put $100 in a savings account and you leave it there for a whole year and you do not touch it, you're trying to save that money and grow it. At the end of the year, that $100 will grow to $100.01. So you will get 1 penny for that, for every $100 that you have. That it's going to take forever for you to make that money grow. They're just giving you little penny every $100. So the better way to save is to actually use a high yield savings account. Some banks do have regular, you could walk into the bank and open a high yield savings account, but most of the bank accounts that are high yield are going to be online bank accounts. So some of the most popular ones, and again, everything in the slide presentation is clickable. So if you want to click on this and read more about it later, you can. These are best savings accounts for April 2021 from bankrate.com, which is just one of the blogs that I like to read. Instead of 0.01, you can see 0.5, 0.57. So you're getting 5 times, 6 times more money than 50 times, 60 times more money. My math was totally wrong. 0.01 times 50 gets you 0.50. So instead of getting just 1 penny, you can get 50 cents, 50 times more money for every $100 that you save. So a lot of times our families might not know about these accounts. So we have to be the one to really do that education. For example, my dad, he retired in 2020. when he turned 70 years old. And when he retired, he did not have enough savings or anything. So my sisters and brothers and I, we all put as much money as we could into an Ally savings account. I went on to Ally Bank, I created the account. I added my sister, my brother, and me as the primary account holders. And every month we all add, if I put $100, my sister puts 50, I put 100, everybody puts as much as they can. And if my mom and dad need, groceries, or if they need to take a trip, or if they have medical expenses that they need to pay for prescription drugs, like, my brothers and sisters come through and we just use the money from the Ally savings account. So, kind of really thinking about being community oriented, and instead of using banks like Bank of America, Chase Bank, Citibank that are in the community, but they don't help you grow your money like a lot. They give you just very little bit of interest. So we have to do the homework and read which are the ones giving higher interest rates. All right, let's see if there's any questions so far. Does the bank use its own money to give everyone their interest? So interestingly enough, banks charge each other interest when they lend each other money. But when you put money into a savings account, they actually take that money and lend it to somebody else. I know it sounds crazy, but this is how banking works. They take the money that you put in your savings account and they lend it to somebody else. They give you 0.5% interest on it. They charge that other person 7% or 6% on their loan. So they're making way more money on the money that you park in the bank from the interest that they collect on lending. And then they have to have a certain amount in the bank, like 10% or 12% cash reserve. So if you come to the bank and say, I need my money, they have to have it. Like they need to have that cash there. But usually they do move money around a lot. If you put money into a checkings account with a debit card, they do not lend that money out. Checking account money has to be sitting in the checking account, because obviously you could try to take it out with your debit card and they don't want issues. But if you put money in savings accounts, any of the ones on the screen right now, then they do use it to make loans, but they do guarantee that the money's going to be there when you need it, because they have to have a certain threshold, a certain amount of cash available, so that when people come to take their money out, they can give them the cash. See, so they take your money out. Kind of, but it's all digital. So it's kind of weird, because you put your money in and then they make a digital loan. They put the money in somebody else's account. They charge them interest, and then somebody else deposits money. So it kind of, it's all like digital accounting. But yes, the general idea is that they do use people's savings deposits to make loans. They make more money and interest off of those loans. And the profit that they use is how they pay people interest and how they make profit for their, executives and stuff at the bank. I know I never learned about this until like 3 years ago. I was like, what? The bank lends my money out? Excuse me. But that's just how banking works. And so, you kind of wrap your head around it and then you get over it. It's a little weird at first though. All right, we have maybe like about 10 minutes left. So I'm just gonna see if there's any questions that I didn't answer. If you still have questions that I haven't covered, please put them in the chat box. I wanna make sure that I answer questions before we wrap up. How much do banks charge for a savings account typically? Savings accounts should be free. That's the big thing that you should know, is whenever you're opening a checking and a savings account, especially as a student, there should be no fees. You want to look to make sure it's FDIC insured. And then the second thing you want to look for is that it's free checking and free savings. There is no reason why they should be charging you fees, because almost all the major banks right now offer free checking and free banking, free savings. So there's no reason why you should be paying. And if you're at a bank that's charging you a monthly fee, you should consider changing it to a bank that will be 100% free without any monthly fees or charges, because it's 2021. Paying for banking is like the previous generation had to deal with that. We nowadays, with all the technology and the innovation, almost all of these services are available for free. All right, do you need a parent to open an account? Only if you are not 16 years old. If you are 16 years old or older, you can open an account without a parent being present. 16, 17, you might need a parent's signature. 18 years old and over, you can go by yourself without an adult. So, you definitely do want to open a student account though, because student accounts have better rates and better deals. But as you get older, once you are not a student anymore, they will transition your bank account from being a student account to a regular account. But yeah, you only need your parent if you're not 18 to sign a paper, or if you're under 16, then of course the parent needs to open a custodial account for you. All right, how do you withdraw the money from a savings account if you don't have a debit card? Great question. So what I do is I log in on the app, but you can also log in on your website, on your online banking, and you request a transfer. So you just transfer the money from your savings account into your checking account. So you got to plan ahead. If you know you're going to need like $100 for your senior dues next week, then you need to transfer the money like 2 or 3 days before you need to take it out. So log into your savings account, transfer the $100. Maybe 2 days later, it'll be in your checking account, and then you can take it out with your debit card from your checking account. So just plan ahead for things that are like, that you need to access your savings account. If you really need it like today, then you can just go to the bank and tell them that you want to take money out of your savings account. But just a lot of people don't really go to the bank anymore. Everybody just does everything online or on their app, on their phone. All right. What do I prefer personally, Alicia? Great question. So I use Charles Schwab for checking because if you go to an ATM machine and you put your debit card and it's not the ATM machine of that bank, they will charge you two ATM fees. One, the bank is going to charge you an ATM fee because you're not using their bank ATM. And then that ATM machine has an ATM fee that they're going to charge you. But the cool thing about Charles Schwab, they're one of the only companies that if you do checking with them, they will give you back all that money, the dollars that you paid in ATM fees. They'll put it right back in your checking account. So I really like that about them, because sometimes I'm out and about and I need to get cash and I'm at an airport or I'm at the gas station and I need to use a random ATM machine and I don't want to keep paying all those ATM fees. So I like that they put the ATM fees money back in my checking account. And then for savings, I told you guys already, I use Ally Savings Bank. It's an online bank only. Okay, so for student loans, we're going to talk about that tomorrow when we talk about credit. So that's a great question. We'll get to that. Can you have a student account as well as a savings? Yeah, you can have a student savings account and a student checking account, and you can either do them both at the same bank and link them, or you can have them at two separate banks if you don't trust yourself to take the money out of your savings account and just keep on putting it in your checking account. Some people do that. They put money in their savings account and then they just transfer it to their checking account every day. I'm like, then you're not saving anything. So if you feel like you're going to be tempted to move the money a lot, then maybe put a savings account in a different bank like I do. I have Ally for savings and Charles Schwab for checking. But it's up to you. It depends on if you have self-control and if you feel like you can trust yourself not to take the money out of your savings account. Alicia said, this is so informative. Oh, I'm so glad. That's the point. That's the point. I'm telling you, we just need to be having more conversations about these things. Most people, they feel uncomfortable to talk about money. They don't know what questions to ask, or it's like awkward to ask people about money. And we need to get over that. We need to start talking more about it so we can all learn more. All right, so I love Clemente's advice here. That's really great to have separate savings and checkings, and a lot of the different high yield savings accounts that are online today offer the best rates. I definitely agree with all of that. Okay, so let's go ahead and move through. These are the different savings accounts that I was going to share. Money market savings is very similar to the online high yield savings, except that they don't let you take the money out as many times. So maybe the online savings account, you can take out like as many times as you want. With money market savings, you can only take out money from that savings account like 3 times or 4 times in a month. So once you take out money the 4th time, it's locked. You cannot take money out of that savings account until the next month. So that's a really good way for you to like really force yourself, like to not take the money out if you want to save, to get a money market savings account. And then the certificate of deposit, or CD, it's a savings account, but it's a special type of savings account that freezes your money and locks it until the end of the term. So sometimes you can do 6 months CD where the money's locked for 6 months. You can do 1 year CD, a 2-year CD, 3-year CD. I remember I got a CD when I was 16. I had a sweet 16, and my family gave me like a couple $100s for my birthday. And then my cousins, my aunts, everybody gave me money, and I wanted to save it. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to freeze it, because if I put it in a regular savings account, I'm going to be tempted to come here and take it out and go shopping. So let me just freeze it and lock it until I go to college. So that's what I did. I locked it in a CD for 2 years, from 16 years old to 18 years old. And then when I went to college, my freshman year, I had like, $500-$600 just sitting in there, and it grows with a little bit of interest too. So you end up with a little bit more money. And usually they pay more interest than the regular bank accounts, like traditional savings or online savings. But that depends on where you open the CD. So that's a good option if you want to freeze your money. In terms of goals, I think, so Alicia, all of those accounts that I just shared, these are all savings accounts. They just have special names. So money market is a savings account. Certificate of deposit, for short, they say CD. That's a special type of savings account. These are all savings accounts. They just have like different rules to each of these types of accounts. All right, so basic goals I think everybody should try to set, especially when you're like 16, 17, 18, and you're just starting out with money. Try to just save up as much as you can. Like, see if you can hit a goal. Like, can you hit $100? Can you double that? Can you get to 200? Can you get to $500? And just challenge yourself to try to save a little bit more. By the time you get to college, see if you can have $1,000 just in a savings account for college expenses, for things like going out, for things like books, for things like fees and stuff that comes up, detergent, whatever. You know, you need things when you're in college. And I really wish that I had done a better job of putting a little bit closer to like $1,000 in a savings account, because when I got to college, my money, it just disappeared like that. And I didn't have any extra savings. And I know that my mom and dad, they didn't have money, so I couldn't call them and ask them for money. So I ended up having to work a lot of jobs on campus and use credit cards. And that's how I ended up making all those mistakes. But if I had like a nice cushion of savings that I was building up from when I was 16, 17, and 18, I think it could have prevented myself from making all those bad money choices. So I always recommend this. Now, we're not going to talk a lot about investing in our series. Tomorrow we're going to talk about credit, and then we're going to wrap it up. But if you're curious to learn more about investing, definitely read some of the books that I recommended and just do some online research about investing. If you work and you have a job, then I think one of the best accounts to grow money is a Roth IRA. It has some special rules, which allows you to put the money in, let it grow until you retire. But if you need the money before retirement, you can take out the money that you put in, which is called contributions, that you contributed to the account. But you cannot touch the profits that you make from the stock market. So it's an interesting account because it allows you to kind of treat it like a savings account, but whatever interest grows, you can't take that. You have to leave that for retirement. So it's a nice account in terms of like, you know, if you need the money, you can get it back, but it is invested in the stock market. So it might go up and down along with the performance of the stocks in the stock market. So it takes a little bit more research on your part before you open that type of account. But if you are interested in investing and you have a family that's interested in helping you with investing, I would say to start by researching the Roth IRA. That's one of my favorite ways to save and grow money. All right, this is my last piece of information that I have, and then I'm going to end it. This is that when you save in a group, you can triple your chances of success. This is a statistic from the National Bureau of Economic Research. They've shown over studies of so many different people in different instances that when you save in a group of people, you do much better at meeting your goals. So some of the tips for how to do that: put budgeting time on your calendar and make sure you and your friends do it together, or that you and your family, you and your sister, you and your cousins, whoever's around you, budget together. And if you don't have people around you that are about their money like that, they like to just waste their money, then do it on social media. Find social media no spend challenges. I usually do them a few times a year. And I know a lot of people do hashtag no spend challenge, where they try to just only spend money on things you need, like food, transportation, but that's it. No buying clothes, shoes, jewelry, makeup, food, gadgets. Like, just cut that for 1 month and see how much you can save. And then you can spend again the next month. So I think like challenges like that on social, they can really help you meet new people, meet your money goals, and just kind of have some accountability and see how other people are reaching their money goals too, so you don't feel like you're all by yourself. And then, of course, budgeting with financial influencers. One of my favorite is Berna. I've actually met her a couple of times, and she's so funny. She has a lot of YouTube videos about budgeting and saving. This one is really funny. It's like how to make a budget work. How does a budget work? So she's really funny. She does like TikTok style videos, but they're all on YouTube. I definitely recommend checking her out. She has like some great content. So it makes you laugh, and you also learn a lot while you're doing that. All right, everybody. So time is up here. We've pretty much gotten through all of the content. The last slide just has some links in case you want to go and find resources. You can go for checking resources, for checking accounts, for savings accounts, and for budgeting. All of these links are free. You can just click on them to open up the page from our website, NGPF, to get all the free activities to help you guide yourself through, getting started with your money journey. So hopefully that was helpful. Thanks everybody for joining. Tomorrow we're going to be doing understanding credit, and my contact information is on the slides. So if there's questions that I didn't really get to answer or anything that you're wondering about, just feel free to reach out to me. Don't be nervous or don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks everybody, and thanks Clemente for putting these together.
Thank you very much. And just as an FYI to everyone, keep an eye out on your emails. We will be sending the PowerPoint slides as well as the event recording most likely by tomorrow. So thank you very much for attending, and take care.
Thank you.
You too.